Hello viewers, welcome to the book review blog. Today we're going to finish our review on the Stephen King book Four Past Midnight. There's two more stories in this collection of shorts, or really novellas is what they are. They're not short stories. The first book is called The Library Policeman, and it's actually kind of funny because I wish that I had gotten this book at the library instead of just using my own copy, because then it would be kind of funny to read a book about a library. But anyway, the Library Policeman focuses on a man named Sam Peebles, and he is a insurance salesman. He owns his own insurance store, and it's a realty store, so he sells houses and insurance at the same time. So you think that was kind of fun. And he also, because he's a business owner, he does belong to the Rotary Club in Junction City, Iowa, which is where this book takes place. And he has been asked by the head of the Rotary Club to make a speech because there was somebody who was going to give a speech at the next Rotary meeting, but they had an unfortunate accident, and Sam was asked to take his place. So he initially was a little reserved about it because he'd never really made a speech before, but he said, okay, fine. So he writes a speech, and he shares it with his friend Naomi, and Naomi's like, well, it's good, but you may want to enhance it with maybe like a couple jokes and maybe some quotations and things like that. Why don't you go to the local library and see if you can get some books about that? So Sam does, and he goes to the library, and he notices that it's very dark inside and kind of has a dark kind of ambiance, where instead, like, he walks into the door and he says, instead of having like a sign that says something like silence is golden, or, you know, please be quiet in the library, it just says silence. And he sees really scary pictures because he goes kind of towards the children's library side of the library, and he sees like really scary pictures of depictions of Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf, and he sees a picture about some kids in the car, and they're screaming, and they're driven by the car is driven by a man in a gray suit, and the man is grinning and driving away, and the poster says something like, don't let the library policeman get you, return your books on time. You know, it's basically saying, you know, return your books on time or this library policeman will get you. So Sam is kind of taken aback by those because, again, they're of a darker nature and things like that. And he meets the librarian named Ardelia Lortz. And she's like, well, she's kind of what you kind of think of a librarian to look like, kind of older, kind of plump, kind of, you know, a nice little old lady. And she's like, oh, you know, I know these pictures are grim, but I like them. They get what they get the point across, and things like that. So he borrows two books from her about, you know, speech writing and telling jokes, and she said, okay, remember to turn these in on time, or else the library policeman will get you. And she laughs about it, and he, you know, is kind of uneasy about it because of these pictures, but he laughs and, you know, goes and leaves. And so he gives his speech, and it's a success. And then he, the next week, he talks to his friend Naomi again, and she's like, oh, you know, how did the speech go? Did you find the books that you needed at the library? And he's like, oh, yes, you know, the library was kind of odd, but yes, I did find the books, and the librarian was helpful. And she said, well, and he kind of described the librarian, but didn't say her name. And she was like, well, no, that's not the librarian. The librarian is a man, and describes this man that's nothing what Ardelia Lortz is described as. So Sam is a little awed by that and taken aback, and he said, well, no, the librarian's name is Ardelia Lortz, and Naomi is really shocked to hear that name, but she kind of laughs because she thinks it's a joke, because she's like, well, yeah, I know an Ardelia, but, she's dead and things like that. So, and then Sam's like, oh my gosh, did I see a ghost? And so Sam goes kind of along his way, and he sees a man that he knows who's a homeless man and an alcoholic named Dave Duncan. And Dave is, he knows Sam and, nice about it. And so Sam tells him about this, and Sam mentions the name Ardelia Lortz to Dave. And all of a sudden, Dave gets really upset and really mad and really scared. And he's like, I can't talk to you about it anymore. And he just clams up and runs away from Sam. And so Sam thought that was kind of odd. But this is going on in days and days. And what ends up happening is that Sam forgets to return his library books. It just kind of slipped his mind. And so Sam gets a call from Ardelia saying that his library books were overdue and that the library policeman is out to get him. And so this really scares Sam because he is remembering a time back when he was younger to a scary moment at the library where, again, he kind of had his own library policeman, if you want to think about it. But so this thought is kind of in his head as he go about his day and his life, because he now needs to find these books. And so what happens is the books end up being destroyed. It's a kind of a weird turn of events of how the books get ruined, but he thinks that he needs to just just pay the fine and, pay for the books that they would cost. But then he gets a visit from this library policeman, and it's, a really kind of stern man, and he's like, you have 2 books that belong to us, you need to return them, and so you have, until midnight, or else things are going to happen to you and to your family and, your loved ones and things like that. So finally he goes and he locates it takes a long time and it takes a while, but he does locate the books, and there is kind of a big confrontation between him, Naomi's involved, Dave Duncan is involved, and Ardelia Lortz. So, and that's kind of where the book ends. And it was just, again, it's kind of funny that I should have gotten these books at the library and beware of the library policeman. So, anyway, the last story in this book is called The Sundog, and it focuses on a teenage boy named Kevin, and it's Kevin's birthday. And for his birthday, Kevin has received a Sun 660 Polaroid camera. Now, if you don't know what a Polaroid camera is, it's a camera that is basically kind of a mix between like an older camera that when you take pictures you have to go get them developed, and a digital camera to where you can kind of get them instantly. But a Polaroid is you take the picture, you snap it, and the picture comes straight out. And then you wait like a little bit and you get this picture. So again, I'm 30 years old, so I remember these pictures, but I think they're out of date now, and so you may not be able to get a Polaroid, or at least what they look like, but that's what they look like. Anyway, back to the story. So Kevin gets this Polaroid camera, and he starts taking pictures with it. And each picture, no matter what he's trying to take a picture of, the picture that comes out shows a dog walking along a picket fence. And this really scares him because, again, this isn't the picture that he took, and so he and his dad go to a store called the Emporium Galorium, which is kind of a funny name, but it's owned by Reginald Marin, and his name is Merrill, excuse me. It's Pop Merrill. And Pop says, okay, well, this, I understand that this one doesn't work. You can, leave it with me, or we can destroy it, and, then you'll be done with it. But instead, what Pop does is he switches Kevin's camera with a different Polaroid Sun 60, and Kevin destroys it. But Kevin thinks that he's destroying the camera that he had, but instead he's destroying this camera that Pop just bought. So anyway, again, Kevin originally thinks that now it's over with and he can get on with his life, but Pop still has his camera. And Pop is a man who is just trying to make a buck and trying to, he's kind of like a shyster. And so he goes around to different people that he knows that really are into this type of stuff, kind of supernatural type of stuff. Because he thinks that this camera is really kind of in a supernatural realm, in a supernatural world. So he keeps going around and nobody wants to buy it. They all see these pictures that come across with this dog and this picket fence. And they're like, this is too weird. I don't want anything to do with this. And the more pictures that this camera takes, the dog is moving. Again, not much, but Pop does kind of put the pictures together onto like a video cassette and he plays it. And you can see how the dog is moving a little bit. And it's getting closer to the person who's supposedly taking the picture of it. So Pop seems to go crazy and go insane because he is really focused on finding out why this is happening. And both he and Kevin start to have nightmares about this camera. And Kevin then realizes, hey, I didn't destroy that camera. I destroyed a fake camera, or a camera that, doesn't have this problem. So Kevin and his dad rush to go see Pop because Kevin's like, Pop still has this camera and he's taking pictures with it. So they get to Pop, and Pop has taken enough pictures that the dog has kind of jumped on its haunches and is ready to jump at the viewer. And so when Kevin gets there, the dog is kind of being born out of this camera. Again, it's very strange and very kind of, again, supernatural Stephen King things. If you know him and familiar with his work, you would understand this. So then the camera or dog, whatever it is, ends up killing Pop, and Kevin kills the dog with a shot of another camera that he and his dad has bought. So Kevin thinks that it's over. So then, fast forward another year, it's Kevin's 16th birthday, and he has gotten a word processor. And Kevin starts to type, a random sentence on this word processor, like, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, or something like that. And he hits print so it can print out. But what prints out is a series of sentences saying something like, the dog is loose again. It's coming for you, Kevin. It's very hungry and it's very angry. So then, and that's how the book ends, this sun dog. So you don't know, again, if Kevin destroys it. Eventually you don't know if the dog eats Kevin or kills Kevin and his family. But again, that's how it ends. So anyway, again, that's how the book ends. I really didn't like it. I'm glad I read it, but it wasn't a story that I really, or a book of stories that I really liked. So, but anyway, that happens. The next book by Stephen King that I'm going to read is called Needful Things. And that's it. I bid you all farewell and happy reading.